This right here is a 3.3% session ale, which means I can have a lot of this and still be able to function for work tomorrow. The reason why we've made it is we've done a lot of high ABV beers lately, and it's sometimes nice to have something you can sit on for a whole afternoon and still be a functional human being the next day. Let's show you how we made it. To make this session ale, we obviously need to go quite light on the grain bill, but we don't literally just want to reduce the quantity of grains we're using because we still want to retain body, head, mouthfeel, etc. So we need to get a little bit creative with how we're structuring this. In this case, we're going to be using 90.7% of just regular ale malt. I think in this case, I'm actually using Pilsner malt because I had no ale malt on hand, but that's what I'd recommend using. 5% of Gladiator malt and 4.3% of medium crystal malt. Now we want a pretty decent amount of Gladiator in there to provide enough dextrin to give us a lot of mouthfeel, body, head retention, etc. As well as that crystal to give us a little bit of sweetness and firm everything up, because otherwise we're just gonna have a very thin, very kind of flavorless beer, and that's not the goal here. We want this to be full of flavor, we just want it to be light on booze. So let's crush this and get to mashing. Let's start mashing. We are now mashing in, but just before we do that, we need to adjust our water chemistry. I have here 1/2 ml of phosphoric acid that's gonna go in and adjust our pH, and I've already off camera added our salts, which is gonna make this a profile of 87 parts per million of calcium, 5 parts per million magnesium, 15 sodium, 72 chloride, 131 sulfate, and 57 parts per million of bicarbonate. The whole goal here is that we're gonna have a little more sulfate to chloride ratio because we want this to be on the crisper, fresher side. And then other than that, it's just a basic kind of pale ale based salt profile. It's not really anything that out of the ordinary, but if you're new to working with water chemistry, go check out that video that teaches you everything you need to know about how to actually start using brewing salt and adjust your water profiles. Sorry guys, it was a bit of a long take and I stumbled over my words there. I did say teach, it was a bit like Forrest Gump, so. Unscripted. Clearly this is unscripted. Time to start mashing in. Now, I was meant to say, mash paddles are for chumps, which is exactly why you need to get a paint mixer. This thing just makes mashing in so much easier, and it's a part of our 10 things that all home brewers should own. So check out that video on the top left.
On the top right.
Top right. Now is as good a time as any to talk about what this beer style actually is. Now, it's a pale ale. It's pretty cut and dry what we're trying to do here. It's meant to be a bit of a thirst quencher. It's meant to be easy to drink. It's meant to be decently hoppy, but not so hoppy perhaps as like a full-blown American pale ale. But the real goal here is that this is just something sessionable that you can sit on all day long without being completely annihilated by the end of it. The goal here is for this to sit around 3.2% ABV, so that it really is the kind of thing you could just have many of over the course of an afternoon, chatting with mates, and you can still walk home at the end of the night. That's really what we're doing here, because we made a lot of very high ABV beers lately, like our super juicy Nipah, the Thiolized Nipah, the Oat Nipah, the Viking 8.9% beer, whatever. All that stuff will be in the links down below. But we need something sessionable and cruisy, and that's what this beer is gonna be. Now that we have finished mashing in, we are closing this up. We're gonna add our malt pipe filter right on here, add this little thing to keep it all in place. Okay, and now I'm just gonna let this recirculate over the course of an hour. This is gonna mash at 67 degrees Celsius. That is on the higher side for something simple like a pale ale, but there's method to my madness. I want this to be light ABV, but I don't want it to be light on body, flavor, mouthfeel, etc. So I do want to retain some residual sugars at the end of this. Mashing on the higher side means we're still gonna retain that body and that mouthfeel and that flavor, but we can also keep this really light in alcohol. So it's like having a full flavored pale ale, just with less booze. At least that's the goal. And I am gonna be sweating throughout this video because this is one of the hottest days of the year. So by the time we come back to you in an hour from now to start sparging, I will be a lot wetter than I am now. We are finished with our mash out. So that was an hour of mashing as well as 15 minutes of mashing out at 77 degrees Celsius to kill the enzyme activity. Forgot to mention that a little bit earlier. But now we are ready to start sparging. So we're gonna let this start draining out through that malt pipe in the center. Then start running sparge water over the top of this grain bed to try and rinse out the sponge, get those extra sugars, those extra suds out, so to speak, and just improve our overall efficiency. We have other videos talking about this in further depth if you want to go and view that. But we have 14 liters of sparge water here, and it was 14 liters of strike water. Forgot to mention that earlier. Salts and everything's accounted for, so now we can just start sparging. Now, little mini tip I've learned relatively recently is running the sparge water over the lid. Just kind of helps distribute the water a little more gently. Disturbs the grain bed a bit less, so you have better clarity, less chance of making channels in the grain bed. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna rinse and repeat this until we're done with this 14 liters of water, and then we can move on to boiling and start talking about what hops we're gonna use in this session ale. We're waiting for the perfect shot for you, and the beer just decided to be all frothy. We wanted the big bubble shot, and now just, come on, clear up, clear up. There we go, there we go, there's your bubbles. Okay, so we are now boiling, and we're just gonna take a quick little sample to get a pre-boil gravity, and we hope we are on target. Target is 1.027. Very, very low, because we want very low ABV. We are at, damn, we're slightly high, 1.029. So close. We're ever so slightly more efficient than we wanted to be, but that's okay, because that means all things being equal, this should still be a 3.4% beer or something in that ballpark, which is still very much in sessionable territory. Now, let's grab some hops and get moving. Our hops is a very, very pitifully small amount today. This is only 5 grams / 0.17 ounces of, I didn't write down what the hop is. This is the very, very pitifully small amount of bittering hops that we're gonna be adding today. This is only 5 grams / 0.17 ounces of Northern Brewer. This is gonna give us 5.7 IBUs, and that's about it. We're not really getting any flavor extraction or anything like that out of the hops at this stage of the boil. It's just about making this beer still taste like beer. We'll talk more about the flavor and aroma hops towards the end of the boil, so we'll see you then. We are now at the end of our boil, and it is time to add our final flavor and aroma hops. In this case, it is gonna be 30 grams / 1 ounce each of Huell Melon, Lupomax Citra, and Mosaic. That all gets thrown into the mix. We're gonna let this boil for another 2 minutes, and then we're gonna start going flame out. Now, the reason we're only doing 2 minutes left of this is because I do still want some traditional pale ale style hop bitterness and flavor and aroma from these hops, but because we're working with such a low ABV and such a low amount of sugar, a little goes a long way, and I don't want this thing to be super bitter. That's an alarm for a different beer. You'll find out another week. Anyway, this is gonna give us 13.3 IBUs at the end of this little 2-minute stint. We'll start cooling this down and then talk about what yeast we're gonna use. That is 2 minutes done very, very quickly. So now we are gonna start recirculating this, running it through the counterflow chiller this time today. If you haven't seen one of these before, basically means that it's a plate chiller, works in a counterflow fashion. So there's all little plates in between all these different layers made of copper. That means that the transition of the heat through the water coming into it is very, very quick. So as it passes through, it goes against the current of the cooling water, comes out the other end, hence counterflow. I explained that terribly. I'm so sorry. There's a video up there that talks about different chiller types and everything. Anyway, once this is flowing on through, we can talk about next steps, but we are stuck because I haven't opened up the valve. My place is all over the head today, apparently. All right, now we're flowing. Now you can get the money shot.
You said your place is all over the head.
Yes. Yeah, intentionally.
What a head.
Whilst this is cooling down, I should talk about why I chose the hops that I did. I want this to be a fresh, New World style pale ale, like an American pale ale, but using newer hop varietals. That's where that Mosaic comes in, adding that blueberry character and those fruity characteristics. Then you've got the Citra, which is just a staple and a classic in this style of beer, adding that kind of grapefruit and fresh tropical citrus. Then we've got a little bit of Huell Melon in there that's going to tie everything together with nice rock melon type characteristics. I think you Americans call it cantaloupe. And then all that together should produce a pretty nice, refreshing, fruity pale ale. Like, it's not going to be mind-blowing full of hops like a NEPA, but it's going to be there, it's going to be present, and it's going to be low ABV, so you can have a lot of it. we are now ready to start transferring. In an ideal world, I'd run this through a little bit longer inside the boiler to just try and get it a bit colder. It's coming out around 30 degrees Celsius, which is a tad warm, but the yeast we're going to use is pretty capable of fermenting at that higher temperature. And the reason why we can't really wait any longer is because it's a very, very hot day. It's currently 41 degrees Celsius. I think that's like 110 Fahrenheit or something ridiculous. So our groundwater is very hot, and it means that we can only get it so cold through the plate chiller. So we're gonna have to rely on the jacket, courtesy of Keg King, to actually get this thing down to yeast pitching temperature. And then we can talk about what strain we are going to use. Now time to add our yeast. We are gonna be using US-05 because we're going for a classic, sessionable American style pale ale. May as well use American yeast. And US-05 is an absolute workhorse in just about every commercial brewery in America. So let's go ahead and sprinkle that in on top. I'm just gonna run with 1 packet. You could use 2, but this wort is very, very low gravity. We finished at 1.031, by the way, which is 1 point above target. Target was 1.03. So this should be, all things going well, a 3.3 and a bit % beer. Very, very sessionable. We're gonna go ahead and close this up, then connect up the glycol jacket to keep this thing cold. I'm gonna ferment at 25 degrees Celsius, slightly on the warmer side because I want a little bit of fruity estery character to come through from that yeast. And then the next time you guys see me will be when I'm holding a fresh pint of pale ale in my hands. And here it is. First and foremost, the color is spot on. It's a bright golden hue. It's absolutely delightful. It's not super clear yet because it's literally been kegged yesterday, so it's got a little bit of time to go for it all to settle out, but I'm not too fussed about chasing clarity for this one. The awesome part is the flavor and aroma. Okay, so on the palate, it's got like medium level bitterness. It kind of has just the bitterness of a typical pale ale, to be honest. It's not off the walls. It's not super light. It's right in the middle of the ballpark there. But the flavor though is so fresh and fruity. So first and foremost, it's passion fruit, then a bit of citrus, and then it's kind of got this melon thing going on, which I have to assume is coming from the Huell melon hops. So it's kind of got this fruit salad type flavor kind of rounding everything out with this vague tropicalness, vague citrusiness. It's absolutely delightful. And the best part is this thing came out at 3.3%. So the starting gravity was 1.031, finished up at 1.006, making this an incredibly sessionable beer that's still packed full of flavor. So I'm very, very happy with these results. And I highly recommend that you do something similar. If you guys have your own low alcohol or even no alcohol beer recipes that you care to share, please comment down below because I am curious about making more low alcohol beers considering just how flavorsome this one actually is. Anyway guys, till next week, cheers, we'll catch you next time.